Please join us in the forum for the next panel, Thriller.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for being here. This panel is about thrillers because we all write crime fiction, and the topic is How Dark is Too Dark. Masters of suspense share the tricks of the thriller trade and how to write a story that a reader can't put down. So, do you want to introduce everybody?
I don't. I want everybody to introduce themselves.
Yeah, that's a good...
They can do a better job than I can.
Let's do that. Starting with you.
Oh, crap. This is my new go-to while I'm on tour. I'm Gabino Iglesias, and I dabble. And I just keep it short.
My name is Kawan. I'm the author of a couple of dozen novels, and most recently, False Idols.
I'm Joe Lansdale. I write as Joe R. Lansdale. I've got maybe 52 novels and 40 short story collections, screenplays, comics, et cetera, et cetera.
Maybe.
Hi, everyone. I'm Julia Bartz, and my first book, The Writing Retreat, came out last year.
I'm Caroline Wolff. I wrote The Wayside, which is also my debut novel that came out last month. And I'm a Westport girl. I grew up here, and I learned how to read here, so I'm really happy to be back.
And I'm May Cobb, and I write about unhinged women in East Texas behaving badly. So...
And then you hang out with Casey Lansdale, and it's like a nonfiction thing. It's awesome.
Exactly. I believe you're taking the first question.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Apologies if this is kind of like adjacent to one of the questions that was asked in the previous panel, but we're talking about thrillers, mysteries, crime fiction. It's a lot about what we don't know. It's about solving a mystery. It's about keeping us engaged. How much of that twist, that mystery, do you know from the get-go? Like, and how much do you discover as you write? Quan, you want to take that one first?
I honestly don't know what I'm gonna write from one page to the next, because I'm a free-form writer, so I get an idea, like, okay, I want to do this, but how do I execute it? And so I just kind of have fun with it, just creating as I go along. So it makes it more suspenseful when it's suspenseful to you too.
Yeah, surprises you.
Yeah, like you're like, oh man.
Well, you know, first I want to point out, though, something. We're really cool because we have 2 moderators. All those others that have 2 moderators, raise your hand. That's what I thought. I find the story as I go. I never know what I'm going to do. When I get up in the morning, I just go to the typewriter. Well, I still call it a typewriter. That's how old I am. I go to the machine, and I just write what is there that morning, and it finds its own twist. It finds its own surprises, because if I know what's going to happen, I'd lose interest in writing it. And I know that everybody is not that way, and everybody has different methods, so I don't suggest mine's the only way or the best way, but it's the only way and the best way for me.
Yeah, we were literally just talking about this, plotting versus pantsing, and I used to be a pantser. For the books that were not published. And now I have kind of a in-between way of doing it, so I kind of plot like every quarter of the book as I go along, because yeah, I do agree that it's fun not to know how things will end.
Yeah, I'm sort of in the same exact camp as Julia. Everything I've written before this novel has been flying by the seat of my pants, and I had no idea what I was doing. With The Wayside, I wanted to discipline myself a little bit more, so I had an outline, so I knew where sort of the major plot beats would happen, but there was a lot of sort of open space within those beats where, again, I was just sort of discovering as I went along, and the characters would take me into rooms I'd never seen before, and like objects would show up, and I'd be like, what is this, and how does this fit in? So sort of a combination, which was fun, but also gave me a sense of direction at the same time.
Yeah, and I'm more in the pantsing camp. I don't really like to plot out too much ahead of time because it kind of, for me, takes the thrill of it away. So often I will sort of like make myself write one page of what the book is about or what I think it's about, just so I have some kind of roadmap, and then I'll just kind of let it go from there. Yeah.
What about you, though? You didn't answer for yourself.
I didn't answer. I look at it like music. I'm a musician. You love music too. We have this concept of like, I'm a pantser, and then you think we sit there and we go, so there's a dinosaur and a ninja, and then you go from there. No, I sit with an idea for weeks, and then it's in my head, and I'm listening to these people, and I kind of know where I want things to go. So I have some sort of plan. Don't outline. I tried outlining ones, and 20 minutes into that, I walked out and punched a tree. So I'm not doing that again. So it's like, I want to be surprised. I want to know my characters, but you think you know someone, and then they see Trump on TV, and they say something, and you're like, oh shit, we can't be friends anymore. I didn't know you like that. So I don't think we know our characters 100%. We just throw stimuli at them. We kind of think we know how they're going to react. And from time to time, if they surprise you, that's great, because you're going to surprise the reader as well. So I'm winging it. I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah, hopefully.
And I have a question for Gabino and Joe. You guys both cross genres in your work. Does that ever get you into trouble? Is it tougher to sell to publishers?
Yes. It does get me in trouble, but I do it anyway, and that's been both the joy and the boon of my life, because a lot of times what they want is, if you've written one thing, they want that again, and I don't want to do that. Or they want, I mean, I might write several crime or suspense novels, but the thing is that thing about crime and suspense, that can contain a lot. If you say the word horror, you tend to, and it can contain a lot too, all of it can, but crime and suspense seems much more open, I think, to people just when they hear that term. Because suspense could be science fictional, it could be pure criminal, it could actually just be a dark novel. I mean, there's so many ways to go at crime and suspense. So I hit there more often. My publisher, Little Brown Mulholland, is pretty good about letting me do what I want. I wrote Westerns for them, you know, and so I do what I want to do. Thank goodness. I might point out that I had to introduce Gabino, so now there's actually 3 moderators.
Yeah. So as you know, Mr. Lansdale is a very young man. He's about 30 right now, but he started very early, which means that I was reading his stuff when I was coming up. And at one point, I kind of realized he doesn't write crimes or mystery or thrillers or horror or westerns. Joe Lansdale writes Joe Lansdale. And it could be a comic book, it could be about zombies, it could be about horses and guns. And that's what I wanted to do. So when I sent out my first novel in 2015, I didn't put a novel underneath it. I created Barrio Noir. It's like, I'm gonna call this my own thing so people don't question me too much. And then it's the obsidian black heart of like noir and horror and all of that stuff goes into what I do. And genre, that's for booksellers and wonderful librarians. Give them a place to stack that book. I don't care about genre when I'm writing.
I've been trying to sell out for years, but I just, I always, when I first start writing, I always turn out to be me. I said, this time I'm gonna write it within the parameters of, and then it never happens.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
And staying on that thread for a second, you both write horror. Is there a brain switch that goes on from thriller to horror? Is it all one thing? I think you've kind of already just answered this, but.
It's whatever people tell you your work is. Like, I wrote a novel called Coyote Songs, and it got nominated for a Stoker collection. I don't know what I'm doing. It's if you put a demon in it, it's automatically horror. It doesn't matter that the demon has a gun, which for me makes it crime. So just mix it all up. It's all fantastic and it's all engaging to readers. So throw whatever elements you like from whichever genre you like. You can use them all.
Yeah, I've actually, we talked about the Bram Stoker. I've actually won a few Bram Stokers, and they
11.
were like, well, quite a few. But we won't count. We won't say 10. Or the Lifetime Achievement Award, which makes 11. So we're not saying that. Yeah. But for me, I was surprised that some of the Bram Stokers I got were actually for crime or suspense stories. They weren't horror stories at all, at least not in my mind.
Oh wait, we got notes. Forgot about the notes. Don't judge me, I'm a professional.
We're prepared.
Where are our notes? May, you lost my notes. No, you didn't. Here we are. We did that thing. So we got writers in the audience, obviously, and then watching online. Let's talk a little bit more about pitching mysteries and thrillers and crime fiction and all that stuff. May, you're banging them out and getting them on TV. So tell us, you want to start about your pitching process. Like, besides, like, I got a whole bunch of crazy women drinking a lot of alcohol and they got guns, which for me, I'm in, but maybe that's not your pitching process.
But it kind of is my pitching process. It's always like adults behaving badly and there's murder. And that's, so, I mean, in terms of pitching it to my publisher, I usually try to just say, you know what to expect. And I'm pretty set in this, I don't know, smutty genre I've fallen into. Why don't you go ahead?
Well, I think the way that this book came about was a little bit unusual because essentially this was pitched to me. I sort of collaborated on this idea with an agency called Assemble that develops IP, and then they pitch them to writers, and the writers write the book. So before The Wayside, I was deep in literary fiction world. I'd just come out of an MFA program. I'd read thrillers and loved them, but really had no sort of ambitions to write a thriller. But then this project sort of came across my literal desk. And there was something about this project that just really resonated with me, and I could see how I could sort of weave in literary fiction elements, but within the framework of a thriller, which is what people really want to read. And I want to write because I want people to read the stories that I tell. So I didn't pitch it. It was sort of kind of came to me, but yeah, a little unusual, but it was a fun way to do it.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
I know that. Yeah, I mean, I feel like Caroline and I are kind of more in the early stages of our career at this
Yes.
point. We could probably get some tips from you guys on pitching. But for the writing retreat, I was chatting with some people about unpublished novels before this. So I had written a couple novels that were not ultimately published. And I kind of was thinking about giving up writing, and I was in a career that I wasn't loving. And so I decided to figure out a plan B and to, move into the world of therapy. But this idea of a deathly writing retreat came to me, and I was like, maybe I should just try to use this as an exercise in catharsis. All my frustration about being a writer and not being able to get published, and kind of channel it into this book, and also just go as dark as I possibly can, because that sounded like a good time. So yeah, I wasn't really conscious of the concept as I was doing it. It was just more for my own mental health, I guess. But something clicked and people seemed to like it.
Oh, so
I was catching a little nap.
I was listening, taking it all in. So my process is a little different because I've been around for a while, so I've become known. I have my own certain little niche. So in these days, I'm just kind of in the cut, and publishers may come to me and say, hey, do you have something that fits in this mold? And I may have that. So it's like almost a marriage of what they want versus the stuff that I have already laying around. But it took a long time to get there, so it's not like that was just it from the beginning. I had to really hit the ground running in the beginning and try to get in the faces of these people, because I am the minority in a certain group of writers, So it's a little bit trickier for us, so we have to get more creative with the way we pitch and the way we kind of jump out. It's kind of like we show you it works first. Does that make that sense? Yeah.
Yes.
Show it works first. People say, okay, it's proven that it works. All right, we'll gamble on it. We'll try it.
I try to be honest about what I do. So I usually try to find something that's from the real world that kind of inspire me, and then I find one thing in the book that I think is gonna make my agent go wait, what? So for The Devil Takes You Home, I was like, hey, I wrote this novel. I was really angry at the healthcare system, and I was unemployed, and I was having a really bad time. Anyway, they chop off a kid's toe with a bolt cutter. Have a nice day. And then I hope that those two lines make her go, what? And then she'll start reading, and then that's much easier than having to explain what you do, because pitching and writing those synopses, like, I don't like that. Yeah.
I'm going to go off script a little here because I want to ask each of y'all, because I need your secrets, how you create suspense. Are there any tricks or tips you have?
Well, I don't know if this is accurate, but what I want to say is that I think maybe there is like a little bit of a mirroring effect between my own sense of mystery and what comes through in the novel. Because like I said, I was working off of an outline, but there was a lot that I had no idea what was going to happen. So in a lot of ways, I was really inhabiting the protagonist, Kate, who's essentially trying to figure out what happened to her son, who's found dead under mysterious circumstances. And so she ingratiates herself into his life to try to figure out sort of what went wrong. And I was really inhabiting her sense of ignorance, and I was really in the passenger seat with her sometimes, and just did not know what was going to happen. And then, of course, in the edit, you know, you inject more authority in there, so it doesn't seem like it's an accident. But in the first draft, especially, it was really like, I don't know what's going to happen.
That sounds exciting, though.
Yeah, it was so much fun.
Almost like method acting a little bit, like you're really in her head.
Yes, you know what it reminded me of? When I was a kid, I was obsessed with Nancy Drew. And I had this computer game that I played on a desktop computer because it was the year 2000. And this computer game is from Nancy's perspective. And she's basically just like wandering around this haunted ski chalet, and she's looking for clues. And so she's sort of like rifling around these different rooms and picking up objects, and some of the objects make sense and then some don't. So sometimes I felt like computer game Nancy, and it was a lot of fun.
I want to play that game.
It's great. I recommend it.
I remember I had a desktop computer game of the Titanic, and I used to play that
That's
all
dark.
the time. Yeah, it was dark, but really fun. Yeah, suspense. It's funny. I didn't really like realize it until I read one of John Truby's books. I don't know if you guys have read. He's about like craft, but he talks specifically about revelations, and so that made me realize, you know, I think we all do it naturally, but it's just like setting up all of these secrets and like withholding information and then giving that information at the right time. And during the course of the book, like having more and more reveals closer to the ending, and they have to be bigger reveals. So it was interesting to read about it in kind of this technical way, even though it also, I think, feels very intuitive for most of us.
I can only speak for myself about, I'm not really conscious of any of those things. I think that over the years since I was a child, I've just read so much of different kinds of things that they're embedded in my subconscious. And I'm very much a subconscious writer. And I decided a long time ago that the genre I wanted to write in was Lansdale. And that's the one I work. And because I write, and this is not to offend anybody, but I don't care what you want. I don't care what you like. I write like everybody I know is dead. So when I write those stories, they're for me. That doesn't mean when I finish, I hope people like. Of course I do. But I can't write with thinking my agent's looking over my shoulder, or my editor, or my family member, or a friend, my pit bull, whatever it is. That I feel like that what I'm doing is creating that story from the subconscious. And that as soon as I say, what does somebody want, I burst that bubble. And when I burst that bubble, all kinds of stuff flows in that I don't really want. So to me, and maybe that's just because that's the only way I know how to write, but for me, the way that I do it, and it's important to me, is to say what makes me happy when I'm doing it.
Yeah, so I think that I lean heavily on the art of misdirection, creating these threads that, you know, you take your readers down the rabbit hole, but not just, okay, I'm gonna throw you off. You have to really create a thread that is so convincing that you, as the writer, almost believe it. And you have to keep reminding yourself, no, the story's gonna go another way. But the reader is following this thread, and they think, okay, this is predictable, I got it, and boom. It's off. It's like making a blanket, trying to untangle a blanket to find the right thread to get to the center of that blanket. I know I talk in circles, but you get what I mean?
I have this thing where I studied crimes and thrillers and noirs for many, many, many years, paying a lot of attention to it and kind of trying to understand the formula. And then once I understood it, I was like, all right, so you can have a really big emotional, physical incident at the beginning of your novel, but you can have another one in every chapter. Like you can introduce like a really big question. Here's the question at the heart of our mystery. And then on the third chapter, you can introduce a bigger question. So it's about, I kind of don't know how things are gonna end, but even when I do, I don't know how we're gonna get there. So I'll do all of that. And I knew this moment in my career was gonna come. I've always been from the Joe Lansdale school of thought, but I'll tell you this, Joe. We've talked before, you know, I have a pit bull. If I write a line and the dog goes, I'll change that line.
They can be persuasive, yeah.
My pit bull also has very strong opinions about what I write.
I think we're gonna start with you, May, for this next one. When I signed with Mulholland, we had a wonderful marketing meeting, and they told me, you're so proud of your horror, right? I'm like, yeah. It's like, you fly your freak flag. I said, yeah, we're not gonna do that. And I was like, oh, okay. They said, no, educated women are who basically reads in this country. So make sure that you nail how you write women. And I think a lot of dudes, they just breast boobily over their entire manuscripts. You've seen those.
Did you say breast booming?
They breast boobily.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, she breasted boobily down the stairs. If you haven't read any of that, please go to menwritingwomen.com. It's a magnificent blog. So how do you approach? I think it's cool that we sat this way, because then we get three perspectives. What do you think is the secret, and how do you go about writing women? In your case, there's a lot of alcohol, but on top of that, how do you write engaging characters that are female?
I mean, honestly, this is the truth. I grew up in East Texas, not far from Joe, and all you have to do is walk out your front door, and there's so much crazy that, like, I don't even have to think up anything. Like, it's just like I'm transcribing my childhood. That's honestly how I do it, so.
I don't know that I have an answer to this question, because I just write the people who are women that I know. Like, I'm a woman, and I write people who are women. So I'm sorry, I don't know that there's like an answer to this. But I will say, I think it's a lot of fun to write men. And maybe that's because I feel sort of,
Easy.
don't take this the wrong way, a little maybe liberated of the complexities. That's not always the case, but well, I feel liberated because I'm like, I have nothing to prove. I'm just gonna write men the way that I see them.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like I have to be so true to my own personal experience, which feels like a lot of pressure. And just writing, you know, people who do whatever they want is always fun.
So in the writing retreat, there's actually no major male characters, which I don't know if that was conscious or not, but in any case, what I did want to explore in that book was shadow parts. So I was training to become a therapist and learning about shadow parts and shadow selves. And those are the parts of ourselves that we repress, usually when we're young, because we're told that they're not acceptable. And for women, it usually has to do with like aggression, rage, you know, certain emotions that are not considered appropriate for women to feel. And so my aim in this book was to just like push as far into that territory as I could, including a couple psychopathic women who are kind of the opposite of how women are encouraged or trained to be in the society, you know, caretaking, thinking about others. So that was really fun, just going into the darker places within women's psyches.
Oh, are we supposed to answer that too? Yeah. Oh, I thought they said that. Okay. I write about anybody I want to write about, and I do it as best I can. If people don't like it, they have that option. But to me, I know all kinds of people. Am I always right? Of course not. You know, you're giving you a perspective. But I don't think you should start writing with fear that you're going to offend somebody or that you're not going to get it right. But you should care. You know, you should give it true and deep consideration about whatever you write. And so for me, I don't have any rules or expectations. I've written from women's point of view. I've written from men's point of view. I've written from other racial point of view. I've written all sorts of things. Am I right? Let the reader decide, you know, because I've done the best I can, because we have one thing in common, and that we're all people. And we have a lot of the same interests, male, female, black, brown, whatever, you know. And so I try to write as honestly as I can. That's the only thing you can do, is write as honestly as you can. And if you have a whole list of things you can't do, you're not really writing as creatively as you might, you know.
You have to be a people watcher. Like when I started out, my stories were very hard, very machismo. They were women in the stories, right? But they were basically male-driven. And so something that I learned is that I was watching women, but I was not listening to them. So it's easy. I can look at you, and describe you in a book, but I have to listen to you. I have to see who you are, what you sound like, facial tics, nuances, how you walk, how do you move. So then I can translate that to paper. So now it doesn't just feel like you're overlooking. You're addressing it. You know, it's like, okay, I feel seen. He's writing about me, I'm writing about everyday people, because I understand the movements of everyday people from just watching. So I think that's the best way, and that's the strongest way and the best way to develop to get your character development skills.
Well said, man, really well said.
Thank you, man. I stuttered a lot.
Yeah. You know, one other thing that I would add too is that I was raised by a strong woman. My dad too, they both were, but my mother was a strong woman. My grandmother was a strong woman. My daughter is a strong woman. My wife is a strong woman. So I just think that, you know, if you're around women and you're listening to them, as you say, and not just observing, then I think that really helps. And I think that's true of anybody from any angle, you know, but well said, man.
I wrote a book called Coyote Songs, and there had a lot of the leading characters were either pregnant women or women who had kids. And as I was thinking about writing that book, I thought, wait a minute, I grew up in a macho Latino culture, and like the black and brown folks, we do the macho thing very well, and I'm not very womanly, sadly. So I had to go ask questions, because I thought I knew two things. And those two things were, every single woman in the world wants to have a baby, right? Because that's what you hear. And then awesome, it's fantastic. When you're pregnant, you can eat cake, and you get the glow. And I was like, all right, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna take all my knowledge, I'm gonna put it in a box and set it on fire. And then I'm gonna go approach every single friend that I have that's had a baby or been pregnant, and I'm gonna ask them some questions. I had never been called an idiot more times than when I did that. But it was like the Shawshank Redemption. When I emerged on the other side of that, I was enlightened. And it kind of opened my eyes to see, like, if I ever struggle with writing a female character, what I do is I get my eyes away from the manuscript, and I look at the real world. If I yell at you, I'm an angry brown man. But imagine for a second that I was white. If I yelled at you, I'm being assertive. If I was a woman, I'm being bitchy and bossy, right? So I look at what society says about women, and I try to write the exact opposite of that if I'm ever lost. Because it's like, I can go to a bar and sit down with my phone and wait for someone. If I was a woman, it's really hard for me to sit alone at a bar and enjoy my phone in silence. So I just look out, and then if I'm ever in doubt, whether I'm writing trans characters or, like, you know, bisexual characters, I reach out and I talk to people. I think, man, this is how I think it works. Let me know if I got it right. Because sometimes the observation, I'm an idiot, so I'll see something and interpret it one way, and I'll get it wrong. So I have to go and ask, and there's no shame in asking. And I'm very lucky that I'm surrounded by amazing women that I get to talk to, that I get to read constantly, and that's an education in itself. And the more you keep your eyes and your heart and your soul open, just writing about a diversity of people, we all hurt, we all cry, we all love, and you use that to sort of create your characters.
You know, one thing I would say too is you got to be careful about the observation in this sense is that not all women are alike either. So you got to be careful you don't decide that this is how it is because I've got to generalize because you know they're very, very different. I mean, like where May's from and where I'm from, it's different in that because our experiences are different. I mean, you go out in the morning, like you say, maybe you get the paper and somebody, did you see my weasel run by? you have a weasel, he's got a backpack on some camping equipment. You never know what's going to happen. So it's a great background for writing. And I'm not making fun of these people. I is one. and I love them. But it's just all kinds of strange stuff like that in East Texas, especially where we live, you know?
It's almost science fiction.
Oh, it is almost. That's one reason I'm popular in Italy is I think it's like reading that something about happening on Mars or something. You know?
I love that, Joe. What's a good day as a writer for you? Like, what's your, process every day when you're under deadline or you're trying to get the word count? When is it like, when do you feel like, this was a damn good writing day?
Yeah, I think that's changed a lot as my life has become more complicated as I've gotten older and have a full-time job and a relationship and a growing family, and there's sort of other parts of my life that I love that I want to cater to other than writing. So this is sort of sad maybe, but I love it. I really like waking up early, like during the week before I have to sign on for my work. And if I can write for 30 minutes, at full tilt and just get the words down and I'm not getting slacked, I'm not getting pinged, I'm not getting emailed, I can really just sort of ingratiate myself into the lives of my characters. And then I sort of emerge and I'm like, whatever else happens today, at least I did that. Like, that feels really good. And then it's always a gift if I have like free time over the weekends that I can sort of do like the grad school thing of writing all day, reading in the morning, reading in the afternoon. That's kind of my perfect day.
I think that's great. Like, I think, my first novel I wrote in 15-minute stolen moments. And I think there's this myth that you have to have all day long to finish a book. No, you don't. Yeah. You can write in 15, 20-minute chunks. It's more about keeping it in your subconscious, and then while you're folding the laundry, maybe you put something in your phone, your notes or whatever, and then you look up and the book's done. It's really crazy.
Yeah, I think sometimes having a surplus of time can be to your detriment, because if you have too much of it, then you waste it.
Yeah, Instagram and TJ Maxx for me. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. So working in short stretches every single day, it's like wild how productive I've been with that schedule.
Yeah, no, I agree that having some kind of time constriction can be really helpful. Yeah, I think the writing retreat, I was writing in like grad school, a little post-grad school, and so I would usually write in the morning too, and then have to go out and do other things during the day. And it's kind of similar still, like I usually try to write in the morning. And yeah, you'd be amazed at how much, I also think writing in the morning you can get more done. I don't know if you guys have this experience, but it's like your brain feels a little fresher. So it's possible to do something in an hour that might have taken like 2 hours at a different time of the day. And also to kind of directly answer your question, May, I think the best writing days are not even about writing necessarily, but when something like clicks into place, which could happen anywhere, and it doesn't have to be at the laptop. So that's just like the best feeling.
Yeah, I write in the mornings, generally 7 days a week. Travel can disrupt it a little. I wrote for 10 minutes this morning. That's all the time I had, but it was a good 10 minutes. I wrote 2 or 3 wonderful sentences, I think. So, but the thing is I get up in the morning and I work for about 3 hours. I do 3 to 5 pages a day for sure, which doesn't mean that I might not get more. But when I do within those 3 hours, if I go in and write 5 pages in 30 minutes, like maybe it's a lot of dialogue or something, and I don't feel like doing any more, I quit. And so I do that 7 days a week, though, and when I do have days where I get 10 or 15, I polish as I go. I don't do multiple drafts. I polish as I go. Then when I get finished, I do one more pass. And it's usually very light because I've been very careful. And I might have to go back, this happened here, and I might want to reinforce that by adding a line here or something of that nature. But for me, I like it in that subconscious range when I get up in the morning before I've awakened too much, when I can still believe crazy things, and somewhat in the dream state. So I work in that dream state as much as possible. And as that dream state begins to fade, so do I. Dean Koontz once told me, he said, I start in the morning and I gain momentum, and 12 and 16 hours later that day, you know, he's finished. I go, ooh. I start as good as I'm gonna get and go downhill. And after 3 hours, I want to go out and play. You know, I want to do something else. And you know, and you're going to be, you're a family person, you develop a different instinct for how you want to live your life and how you want to, you know, be with your family and do different things or pursue different interests. And so I do that, and it really helps me because, I mean, like I said, I've written a lot of novels. My career's been about 53 years, and I have 53 novels, although I didn't write all of them one a year. Some years I wrote 2 and 3, some 1, but I wrote lots of short stories too, and screenplays, comic books, essays, whatever, but it all comes down to getting up in the morning and showing up. And that's the trick, showing up.
I think a good writing day is any day that you get to write. I used to try to put myself on a schedule, but it feels so restrictive. Like it's like you're being rebellious, like you're being forced to do something. So I write when the mood strikes me. Sometimes I may sit and write the same sentence over and over for an hour, get up and go do something else. I don't touch the laptop again 3 or 4 days. Then I may just, boom, catch lightning in a bottle. So now I'm doing 10 and 11 hour clips every day, not bathing and just going. So it's hard to put yourself, when you have all that free-flowing energy, it's hard to put yourself on this, which I should be on a schedule, because that's just what normal people do, but I've never been normal.
But you know, my schedule's loose. It doesn't start at a certain time. It's when I get up.
I was sitting over here like, I envy you for even having that discipline.
Yeah, I get up in the morning and I take the dog out, and he insists. And after I take the dog out and feed him and I get a cup of coffee, whatever time that is, I go upstairs and work. And I don't have a 3-hour clock. That's my inner clock. It works 3 hours and it just quits. And what's funny is I might, in that 3 hours, write 50 pages, I might write 5, but I'm there every day. And I'm polishing as I go, or I reread it the next day to try to go through it. But I never feel like I can't work on that clock either. I can't punch the clock and go. It has to be, okay, now I'm up, let's have fun.
Exactly.
But I don't believe in the muse. We and I differ in one ways. I never wait for it, because I find that the stuff I write when I feel I'm inspired and the stuff I write when I don't feel inspired are about the same. You just feel better when you're doing it, but it doesn't mean it's necessarily better. It's just whatever your mood is in, makes you feel like you're doing better work. Some days you might be, but I look at some of the other stuff and I go, well, damn, that's better than the day when I was, you know, really feeling hot. What's going on here? In fact, sometimes when I'm really feeling hot, it's when I'm doing the worst work because I'm really, oh, you're a smart guy. You're doing. My wife used to, I would laugh, I'd have laughing while I was working, and my wife come to the bottom of the stairs and go, you're not that funny.
She should know.
She should know.
I see what we do as 2 very separate things. There's publishing, and publishing sucks. So when I do about a week ago, I'm putting together an anthology. I need some big names to sell it. So I call my buddy Josh Mallerman, who wrote Bird Box, and I go, hey, Josh, can I put you on this thing? He's like, yeah. And then I tell him about my day, and he's editing a documentary right now. And we were complaining to each other about emails and phone calls and Zoom meetings. And he said, I call them my administrative days. And I was like, I'm gonna start using that. So those days always suck. And I don't let publishing even pop into my head when I'm writing. Because exactly. Like I've been a high school teacher, college professor, I've worked construction, I've done it all. Any day that I can get up, walk the dog, and mine says too, and then come home and tell stories for a living. Some days I know what I'm writing is gonna be garbage, and tomorrow I'm gonna rewrite it. But the fact that I get to do that instead of like going to the office and trying not to punch my boss, that is a good day. Like any day that I stay out of prison and I'm at home in my shorts telling stories, that's the best day ever.
We have like maybe time for one more question. So
If that is all the time, then I think we should throw it to them, right?
I don't think we're doing audience questions.
Ah.
That's going to happen in the signing line.
Sorry, audience, you can ask
Doing
us in the
audience
back.
questions?
I don't think so. Is that? But feel free to come to the signing line and ask us your questions.
Let's do a short one, right? Like, what was the last book, not by you, that you read and you're like, I have to tell people about this?
Yeah.
May.
Okay, it would be this book called "You Will Never Be Me," and it's by an author who's a dear friend of mine, but it's not why I'm in love with it. It's just great, Jessie Sutanto, and it's about sort of like influencer culture. And she writes such like scathing, scalpel sharp, and the intrusive thoughts in her book. I'm like, Jessie, you're so nice. Why is this so dark? It's completely, it's unputdownable. So that's You Will Never Be Me.
I think the last book that I read that I want everyone to read is The Bright Sword by Lev Grossman. It's fantasy. Lev Grossman wrote the Magician's trilogy, which I think is one of the best fantasy trilogies of all time, I would venture to say. The Bright Sword is an Arthurian legend, and it purportedly took him like 2 decades to write, and you can see in a good way. I think in like my dream life, I would actually be a medievalist. I love medieval history, and it's beautiful and it's fun. It's just fabulous.
I finally read Yellowface by R.F. Kuang, and it was incredible. It's from the point of view of a young white woman who's an author. Her book came out, it didn't do very well, and she's friends with a Chinese-American author who is just like the shining star, everyone loves her. That friend ends up dying in front of her, and the protagonist steals her manuscript and publishes it as her own. So much, it's not a thriller, but it's written like a thriller. There's so much suspense, and yeah, you will not be able to put it down.
Dead-Eyed Dick by Vonnegut is one I'd missed, and I dug it out and read it. And I love how he, has this really easy-to-read manner, and he has a lot of satire in his stories. And this one, just to give the basic thing, is that his father was best friends with Hitler. So it's all of that, how that affected the family, but it's funny because it's Vonnegut. So that's what I've just read.
If I had to pick, I would probably say Tananarive Due, and I always jack her name up.
Yeah.
The Reformatory, about the little boy, what was that, in Florida, where they had the kids in the Reformatory, and that was like, would you call that suspense or horror? It's kind of like...
It's her.
Yeah, it's her, yeah.
You should say it's also like historical fiction.
Yeah, so, but it was pretty good. I think the story was awesome, and it had some twists and turns in it that I didn't see coming.
There's a novella in translation called Wormwood by a Spanish writer, Leila Martinez. And I was reading that, and I had no clue why it was appealing so much to the fun side of horror that lives in me. And then I realized the best way to describe Wormwood is if you took Goosebumps and said, you're an adult now and you have a heroin problem, you would get that book. There's like shadows in the hallway that will kill you. There's a monster under the bed, but it's all serious and it's for adults and it's about grief and generational trauma. But the idea of like, I have to turn off the light and run to my room because the shadows are gonna eat me. That was like, this is Goosebumps for adults. So Wormwood by Leila Martinez is fantastic.
Can you send me that title and the author's name on email?
I'll get you a copy. Yeah. Give it up for your panelists, everyone. Thank you for coming out. We'll see you in the back. Enjoy the rest of the day. May, anything to add?
Thank you all for being here.
All right. If you see May at the bar, buy her a drink. Thank you for coming out.
You see that weasel?